respectful of everyone's time. But Rick, he is the founding chef and owner of Limestone Pizza and Kitchen Bar in Lawrence, Kansas, which he has now sold. But he works for a food distribution consultant called Cisco of New Mexico. With clients in restaurants, retail, and manufacturing. Rick co-founded the Lawrence Restaurant Association in 2017 and has been the culinary arts instructor at the Lawrence College and Career Center and Flint Hills Technical College, teaching classes in food and beverage, small business entrepreneurship, and restaurant sustainability. So today in Restaurant Startup 101, he's going to discuss the basic concepts of small business startup, from creating an idea to finance, licensing, and construction to sustaining long-term success. So we will deep dive into business plans, profit and loss, marketing, and proactive accounting. And so this is going to be interactive. So if you have some questions, you ask. And so help me welcome Rick.
Thank you. As you heard, I have a lot of history back in my home area, Kansas City area of Kansas and Missouri. I moved here about 3 years ago, and I have yet to really solidify my history here, but I'm really trying to. That's why I really want to do events like this as well. But just a brief overview of what we're going to do here is this is a workshop about small business, and a lot of small business that I know is in the world of restaurants. And so that's why we kind of titled this workshop, Small Business Restaurant Startup. Not knowing my audience, I don't like to just ramble on. I can take really deep dives in restaurant talk, shop talk. So what I like to do is just kind of really open it up and take questions. Don't be afraid to interrupt, to ask a question, jump right in. That really helps me because I can cover a million topics over days, weeks, whatever, but I could cover a lot of topics if you bring them out of me as I'm speaking. So if something pops up, if I say something that really strikes you or you want to know more, please don't be afraid to jump in and ask me about it.
Rick, we have such, our small audience. I wanted to, so what's going on with, so Carmen and her husband just opened a restaurant.
Okay.
So I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Carmen, and I own La Pizzeria. We started with a little bicycle and John Dunn shops where we started to sell paletas, the frozen fruit bars, they're Mexican frozen fruit bars. And then from there, we've grown into a little space in the Ski Valley where we do paletas. And we're 2 months in opening Panaderia, which is like a fast casual type of snack, tacos type thing. We don't have a background in 3 years. That's all the stuff we've done. So we're here to learn because this degree is engineering and my logic science.
Oh, fantastic.
And so we're like, hey, we are doing it, but doesn't mean we know what we're doing all the time.
This is perfect. I know your business well.
Yeah.
I know your business well. I follow you on social media, and my kids love your paletas, and yeah, been a fan since the first time I went to you on at John Dunn Shop. So yeah. And I think you were at the Harwood event maybe last fall or something. Yeah. So yeah, know you well.
Yeah, my name's Daniel Ruiz, and Carmen's husband and business partner. So a lot through our journey, she's been kind of taking care of like most of like the social media aspects and really getting our brand out there. I've been focusing a lot on like our products and quality control and kind of like with Carmen's ideas, kind of bringing them to life and kind of doing like the food quality and kind of like the more of the culinary aspect. So that's kind of where I fit in.
Great. So just so you know, I'm probably going to target you and have a lot of questions for you through this, because this is great. It's good to know kind of your background and know your product. And that way, as I'm kind of rolling through my slides, I have something to kind of reference and to pull in as an example. So just to get us going so we can get us all out of here on time, a little bit about me. I grew up a poor kid in Wichita, Kansas, and my mom was a a hard worker, you know, 2 jobs all the time, trying to put food on the table, which is how I learned how to cook, because it was my job when she was working second shift jobs to cook food for my family, just like a lot of us learned how to cook. Trial and error, doing it every day, that's the way you get good at it. So by the time I was in high school, thinking about careers, I was already pretty good at cooking. You know, I could cook a meal for people. I was pretty popular in high school because everybody wanted me to do dinner parties. We didn't do keg parties, we did dinner parties, and that was a lot of fun because I was kind of the star. And but you know, didn't have money for college. I took a year off. I eventually went to college at the University of Kansas. But while I was going to college, I was also working full time in a restaurant, going to school part time, paying my own tuition. Eventually, the job of executive chef at the restaurant that I was working at was offered to me. I took it. It was a great job. I did that job for 20 years. And it was a great place to work. I really enjoyed it. I left it to take a teaching position. A friend of mine who was a culinary instructor at a local high school was leaving. He wanted me to take the job, so I applied. It was a big change. It's the hardest change I've ever done in my life, to go from, you know, restaurant life, which it was a busy, big restaurant. A lot of people would have thought that was really hard, but then standing in front of high school students all day long was something that I hadn't done before, but I really enjoyed it. I left that to open my first restaurant, which was Limestone. I'll reference that a lot because that was kind of my baby. It was my first real well formatted, well put together business concept that I did. So you'll hear me reference Limestone a lot. I eventually became a silent partner, went back to teaching, then restaurant consulting, teaching, restaurant consulting, just kind of back and forth. I did everything in consulting from, you know, back end financing. You know, you want me to figure out your books, your taxes, things like that. I was hired to just do food costs, sanitation, all those different things. I was hired once to just make the best hamburger that this restaurant could possibly have. So product development is another thing that I really enjoy doing. It's fun to have somebody ask you to develop a product. I think of it as like a singer-songwriter. If somebody said, can you write a song for our movie? Yeah, tell me a little bit about the movie, and then you create this perfect song. That's kind of how I see food sometimes. So those are the things that I've done. My wife and I, about 4 years ago, really wanted to move west, and she works at home remotely. So it was up to me to find a job. I did, a job offer came here from the Taos area. We didn't know much about Taos. We thought we were going to be in Colorado somewhere, but we ended up here. I did that job for a while. I eventually transitioned over to food distribution, and I work with Cisco now, who's a food distributor. Do you need me? Oh, yeah.
Do you wanna unmute? I guess you can ask him because the mic is on your machine.
Ryan, do you want to introduce yourself? Brian's grabbing some coffee.
So you can write an introduction in the chat.
Okay.
I can do that. I'm on the member committee at the. Okay, thank you. I'm trying to unmute, and it's not happening, so it says, I'm on the member committee of the club at Boston Finance that advises on F&B and events. I'm a communications person and just trying to learn more about the F&B world. My experience as a teaching plus boy at the International House of Pancakes and coffee at restaurant part.
Great. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, I like to go into lots of different phases about this, but I really want to make sure when I talk to people about small businesses that they're really understanding it from a conceptual point. Like, is this something you really want to do? Is it something you love? And so I'll talk about that a lot. Again, the minutia, the daily things, ask me questions. I'm sure I have experience in it, but we'll kind of run through what an idea is, putting your passion into an idea, turning that into a concept. I really believe in building a mission. It's very important to me that, you don't just open a business, open the doors, and then hope that it kind of takes care of itself. It's a lot of work. It's like, a plant, you got to water it every day. You got to take care of it. It's a child in many, many ways. For a while, you got to change its diapers. You got to feed it. You got to raise it properly and hope that it takes on its own life in the future. A business plan is a really big part of this. I do have examples of business plans. If anybody wants to take a look at it, we can, meet afterwards. If we have time, I can pull up some stuff on my laptop. Real estate, finding a space, very important. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then, the other parts of conducting business for the life cycle of the business is certainly really important too. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Again, Limestone was my wood-fired pizza restaurant, and I do use that as an example a lot. We really worked hard to build the concept, build the mission, turn it into something that had a life of its own. We referred to Limestone as its own person, its own being, and that was really important for how we conducted business. So now we're going to talk a little bit about your ideas, and I really feel like an idea is an important thing, and an idea you can do that anytime when you're driving the car, while you're sleeping, you dream about it. It's really, really important, but sometimes we have ideas that just aren't viable, right? It's just, you dream of something that maybe just works for you, or maybe your friend group, but you really have to think about an idea that's viable for everyone if that's what you want. Is there a market for it? Is everybody going to want to come and get your product? That's really important too. And doing a market study research, asking people, involving people as much as possible. You don't want to have a secret business and then open the door someday and then say, where is everybody? You have to get the word out. You have to ask people, do you like my product? And ask a lot of people, draft a menu, get it in front of people and accept criticism, have them look at it and write all the criticism down, because it's not just what you want to eat, it's what everybody else wants to eat. How many people will come? Are you alienating? Are you being exclusive to certain people or certain diets? These are all things that you have to think about. There are a lot of niche restaurants and business ideas that really cater to a small group, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But for most of the purposes that I speak about, we're talking about viable, profitable businesses that we have the option, hopefully someday, to take on to the next level, whether it's multi-unit or, selling it. There's a lot of different life cycle events that can happen within a business that we really want to talk about. And, a dream, it's not always an idea. A dream is a dream, but a dream can be an idea that can become a concept. And that's really what we want to do here, is defining a concept. And for me, it comes down to, can you write your concept into a paragraph? And it doesn't have to be a small paragraph. It could be a big paragraph, but it needs to be stating what your idea is in one sound, solid paragraph. And then I think taking a step back, maybe a couple of steps back, just like when you hang a picture in a room or paint a room, you want to step back and really think about how it looks, not just from your close-up view, because it's in your heart, it's in your brain, but what do other people think about it? What are other people going to think when they look at your business from the curb, from your sign, from all of these different vantage points that might be there for people to view your business? I think it's really important to develop your financial expectations. What do you want to get out of this? If you're just looking for a hobby, then let's call it a hobby. But if it's a business and it's your idea and your concept, then you really need to think about your financial expectations. How much money do you want to make? And can you do it? Can you figure it out? And is it better than what you're doing now? Or are you willing to take that risk? And I always ask everybody, is this business idea something that you want to do or something that you have to do? And sometimes we have to do it. When I was a kid growing up, I had to go to work. I had to get a job to help put food on the table for my family. And there's been times where I invested the money to open a restaurant because I had to. There was just nothing else for me to do at that particular time. But I try to stay away from the want tos. I'm getting to a point in my life where I gravitate more towards the want tos because I want to have more fun. But it's certainly an important question to ask is, when you're thinking about your business, it's something you have to do or something that you need to do. Or something that you want to do. Be real about the lifestyle. It's hard to own a business, right? You work a lot, you work all the time. Somebody calls in, who's going to go into work? You're going to go into work. Yeah, exactly. It's challenging. Here in Taos, of course, we have a real labor shortage. So you have to decide what your hours are based on your lifestyle. You have to make all these decisions, and it's a real thing right now. And it's not just here. I think that the Taos community certainly has a lot of challenges, more so than other communities with labor shortages that we can certainly talk about. But I always tell people right now, it's like, really, you're going to open a restaurant when there's nobody to work, and you do find somebody and they may not show up, or it's Memorial Day. After Memorial Day, everybody kind of decides they're going to go do something else. It's summertime. I'm going to go have fun all summer long. I'll find a job in September. So a lot of challenges there to think about, and then having an exit strategy. I think you have to think that through from the beginning. What if this doesn't work out? What if it does work out? What if I want to get out of it in 10 years or 20 years? You just never know, but it's always good to kind of be thinking about I'm not going to die doing this job. So what are the next steps? What's my exit strategy going to be? If all of these check out, then I think that's when you kind of start to develop your mission. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I did, I put this up here because, to me, a concept gets you ready for the plan, but certainly all of these boxes over here that you have to do, and there's a lot of hurdles that we'll discuss in a minute, but get that concept down. That's your free time. You don't have to talk to any bankers, any lawyers, or anything to have a concept. Maybe talk to other people, talk to friends, family, maybe strangers, if you think that might help you a little bit. But, we're going to get you ready for a plan. This is a mission statement for a restaurant that I took all the way to the end. It was in the bank, money deposited, menus, everything. The property didn't work out. And that's one of the hurdles that will happen, and that happened with this particular. It was called Picnic. We were kind of taking a Mexico City type of cuisine of doing Mexican flavors with traditional Midwestern barbecue as the proteins. And it got great reviews on paper. The bank loved it. And then the rent went up with the property that we were looking at, and it just didn't work in our business plan anymore. But the concept statement was Picnic is a lively neighborhood restaurant located at the crossroads of Mexican and barbecue cuisines. Trying to be creative with words. Where barbecue and Mexican food meet, a multi-sensorial experience awaits the community through the mouth-watering flavors created by local chef Zach Freiling. The restaurant will have a familiar and relaxed vibe in which family, friends, and strangers all feel comfortable coming together to share food, drink, and good times. So I tried to encompass it all in one paragraph. That kind of gives anybody a pretty good idea. Like, I had some people say, oh, I got goosebumps just thinking about eating at this restaurant. And this is a really important thing to do. And this is customer facing. So this is what you would want somebody to read as a possible customer and have them feel the vibe of your idea, your concept. And if you don't do this step, I think you're really missing out. So that's a really good example. And a mission, and this is an example of a mission statement that we did at Limestone, which was where we really wanted to have this constitution on paper in case we got to a problem or had to discipline an employee, or we got into a conflict in our partnership. What are we going to do? And so what this really did was it put everything, our ideas, our values, all on paper so that we were able to achieve what we wanted. And it started with number one, which was our food. And we were really into locally sourced, delicious food. We wanted to really blow people away with our food. That was the most important. If we didn't have that, we really didn't have much. And then hospitality, hopefully that's always a really close second for everyone, that, you got to have a good product And then you gotta have a good smiley face, a really good hospitality program to back it up. Because people want to feel wowed by the presentation of the product. They want to be smiled at. I mean, how many times have you walked out of a place going, you know, the food was okay, but man, the people there were really nice. They really helped us out. They answered all of our questions. And I don't want to say it's a forgotten art, but we're really losing ground on hospitality these days. And I feel like we really need to up our game on that and make sure that we know that it's more than just the product. It's about how we sell the product. Our environment really meant our space, this space in here, how we feel about how you feel when you walk in, how the customer might feel, how our staff might feel. And that was really important. And remember, this is all before we opened the doors. Okay, we had this all down on paper. So knowing what we wanted to do once we got busy was very important to us. Our neighborhood and our community, we were very community centric. We wanted to do things for the community. We wanted to take those calls about donations if they were the right thing for us to do. And we wanted to do a lot of community and outreach. And I was a teacher. I was just leaving my first teaching job to open this restaurant. And I felt that very strongly of what it was like to teach and to share information. And we really wanted to do that at this restaurant, to have a real learning environment. You know, we wanted to train people very well. We wanted to teach people skills. We had this beautiful wood-fired pizza oven that, you know, not only did we teach people how to make handmade wood-fired pizza, but how to tend fire. You know, that was a cool thing to teach somebody of, like, you know, before you make pizza, I have to teach you how to tend fire. You can't let it get too hot. You can't let it get too cold, or service can be ruined really quick. You're going to get behind one way or the other. So it was a really fun environment to train people in. And then most importantly, please don't miss out on this. Your financial success has to be, doesn't need to be number one, doesn't need to be number two, but it needs to be in there, that you really need to think about your bottom line. Because at the end of the day, all those other things are great and fun to talk about, but if you don't have this, you're not going to be in business for very long. So always plan in your mission that how you want your bottom line to look. And it doesn't have to be a percentage. It just means, you know, what does health mean to you? Does health mean that you know, get to take vacations every year, and that you're going to put some of your money towards hiring a manager that's going to, you know, run the business while you're away? Whatever it should be, it's very important to not overlook this one. So thinking about location, you know, it's very, very important. And sometimes location starts the idea. And that's a very slippery slope to get into, because locations will break your heart. So many times, I can't think of how many times I've been in a business situation where the entire concept I visualized in that location, and then the location didn't work out, or it's too expensive, or there was a plumbing mess that was going to take $500,000 to fix, and you never know. So, you know, think about location, but have your concept first. Sometimes you might find the location and design a concept for it. Maybe it's your uncle's property. Maybe somebody wants you to do something there. You never know. But I do think that generally it's going to be, you know, finding out your market. Is it a viable location? What are the demographics like? Are there enough people driving by? Does it have the diversity of demographics that you want? Does the location fit your idea? Can you retrofit it to fit your idea? You know, obviously, can you afford it? It's very, very important. And then within that number 4, you know, like in my case of that manifesto mission statement, is it going to become more expensive eventually? Because a lot of times what happens is you find a property owner, has commercial property, he wants to lease it, and then the build out, the property improvements then become more expensive, so the rent goes up. And then all of a sudden, your idea of this place you were going to pay $500 a month rent is now $1,500. And if you're building a spreadsheet like I am, and you enter that new number in your profit and loss statement, it's all of a sudden, well, there went all the profits because we just gave it all the way to rent. So very important to make sure you can afford it. And then again, don't fall in love with it, because it may not be the first one. It may be the last, I don't know, but certainly keep in mind that will be other locations, there's other fish in the sea, there's other things to think about. Tools and resources, hurdles, obstacles. The reality of opening a business is certainly things like licensing. It's very easy for some people. Like I consult with some businesses that, I'm going through this list of things that they need to do. Oh yeah, I got that. That's all easy. I've already applied for my environmental permit. I've already applied for my liquor license. I've got this, I've got my building permit, I've got everything. Oh, great. Let's move on to other things then. But a lot of people kind of stumble on these and it's hard to find information, right? Like there's nobody there that's going to walk you through this, that's going to say, okay, it's not like going to shop for a mattress where somebody's going to say, do you want it squishy or do you want it hard or do you want it to be big or little? Nobody is there to help you through this. You kind of have to learn it on your own. And like we were talking about earlier about some people keeping that information close to the vest. Like, I'm not going to share that with you because I had to learn that the hard way. Now you have to learn that the hard way. And that's why I've always made it my mission to share as much as I can so that the next person has the easy route to get to that permit or that license, because it's not easy. You get rejected, you have to wait. Those environmental permits, there's so many things that go into that. People think, well, I'm clean, I'm spick and span. Well, you don't have a 3-compartment sink and you don't have the right grease trap and your septic system isn't big enough for the type of operation that you want to do. Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. All of a sudden, you're staring at, $40,000 that you thought you were good to go. Your plumbing works fine. What's wrong with it? Well, the environmental department is going to tell you whether or not it's has capacity to do what you want to do. And those things really catch. I mean, I've seen it here just working with different people around town that I thought we were going to open a business 14 months ago, and we're still 4 months out because of a septic issue. So a lot of, talking to other people, talk to me, find me. I can certainly help a lot of these. Liquor licenses aren't easy if that's something that anybody wanted to do. But they're a little bit easier now in New Mexico. Taxes, LLC status should be the first thing you want to do. It's pretty cheap. If you have a business idea and you really feel like you're going to take it to the next step, first thing you want to do is get an LLC. Because you can use it for other things if you want. Oh, please, thank you. But it's just nice to have that protection and that tax status for when you do move on to the next level. And it will be required for a lot of things like, getting an employee identification number and those sort of things. So really important to just do a little bit of research. I won't dive into it too much now, certainly able to ask questions in the Q&A portion about some of these things. Real estate, get to know, if you're looking for commercial real estate, get to know some people around town, people that can get on the phone. Hey, this place is opening up. I got the inside story. It's really nice to be the first to look at properties if you're really serious about opening a business. Bakers and financing, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I would really like to talk about the different type of financing that you can consider for small business, but certainly, getting to know people that can help early on so that somebody knows that you have an idea that you want to follow through with. Building is not fun. General contractors are hard to find and they're very, very expensive. Maybe you can do all the work yourself, but usually to do it right, to pass codes, you're going to have a licensed general contractor to do the work for you, to do the mechanical work, which is all of the plumbing, electrical, the gas. Those are things that you can't do yourself. You probably can, and maybe in some instances nobody will notice, but usually during an inspection, if it's not done right, they'll just walk out the door and say, "Oh, come back in a month. Let me know when you got it right." And then suppliers, finding suppliers to provide the things that you need, the goods, the cost of goods, and finding suppliers. It's kind of it's a business in and of itself. I work for a supplier. They're all trying to sell you something, but it's really, finding a relationship and finding a trustworthy path that really helps most people in the realm of suppliers. So again, a lot of stuff here. We can dive into a little bit more of it later, if you'd like. But financing is very important. And this is what most people come up to me when they have an idea. They're like, I have this idea, and this rich guy came up to me and said, hey, I got the money. If you want to do this, I'd like to finance you. And then first thing I say, well, tell me what the details are. Is he handing you $100,000 to do this and it's all your money? Well, no, I mean, I'm going to be a part owner. Well, how much of a part owner? Well, I'm not sure yet. Well, there's a lot of different ways to get into that, and it can be a real mess if you're not prepared for it. But a bank is usually the best place to go. If you have good credit, you got some collateral, that's your money. The bank's giving you that money, it's yours. You don't pay it back, they'll take it back from you. But generally, that's your money to get a loan. That's a really good, clean, solid way to do it. But they're going to require a really good business plan. They're going to want to make sure you have that general contractor, all those licensing things. It's not just here it is, go have fun with it. It's usually on a business loan. There's somebody that's assigned to track and check all the boxes to make sure that you do all these things that you need to do for a startup. We all know that we've gotten loans for other things, but with a startup loan, there's a lot of boxes to check that say, you have to, here's your timeline, here's where you're going to spend the money, we're going to write the checks, here's how it's going to go down. So it's a good way to do it. Family can be a good way to do it if you have that relationship, if there's family money. But there are a lot of dangers and pitfalls. It can make relationships go sour. It can cause a lot of problems. But if it's as clean and easy as the bank is, that's an easy way to do it. My wife and I bought a condo up in Angel Fire last spring. It's cheap. It's just a little short-term rental that we wanted to do. And my wife's dad said, don't borrow from the bank. I'll give you the money at an interest rate half of what is out there right now and save you a lot of money over the next 20 years. And that was great. That was really clean. We did it just like a loan. Thank you very much. That's awesome. But if it was just, somebody promising you something and then you have to go back, oh, where's that money you promised me? Treat it like an official bank loan if you're going to do it the family way. Not only will the family member that wants to give you the money appreciate that you're doing it that way, but it feels a lot better for you that you really keep it on the up and up and straightforward. Partnerships I could talk about all day. Partnerships are great. Share the load, share the burden, share the responsibility, but sometimes partners don't always follow through. Sometimes maybe you don't follow through to the expectations of the other partners. Sometimes partners put in more money than you. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And there's partnership of investing money, and there's also what we call an operating agreement, which we'll get into in a minute, which says, your partner invested 75% of the budget, you invested 25%, but you're still 50% owner. You can still do it that way through an operating agreement. And it sometimes, again, can cause hard feelings later if somebody put in 75% of the money and feels like they're doing 75% of the work, but you're a 50% owner. That can cause things to go sideways. So operating agreements take care of us in this vein, and they're legal documents. But again, partnerships, how many friends have you had that you thought were your best friends throughout the duration of your life? Doesn't always work out due to circumstances. So beware of partnerships, but they are a good way to get to the finish line if you really want to do it. But you're sharing a responsibility, you're sharing decision-making power, which is uncomfortable for a lot of people. If it's your idea and somebody else is investing the money and you don't get to make all the decisions for your idea, that doesn't really feel right, does it? So beware of that. Bootstrapping, this is the most common way. I've got a location, it's cheap. I'm going to build it all myself. I'm going to do it cheap. I'm going to get the doors open in a month, and I'm going to just start making money slowly, and we're going to get there. It's a hard way to do it. It's really challenging. It sometimes looks ugly if you make a really bad first impression, and people think that you're running things on shoestrings. But some people nail it. And some of our biggest success stories, like Chipotle, that's a bootstrapping story. of somebody that found a cheap location, did something that nobody thought they could do, just went to the grocery store and filled up all the little holes in the make table with ingredients, but had the desire and the mission to do it the right way and wanted to follow through. So there are those examples of people doing the bootstrap method and being extremely successful because your startup was low, you didn't invest much, but it's hard and there's a lot of risk and the highest risk for stress and burnout and just throwing in the towel and giving up. So lots of different ways to do it, but beware of all of them. An operating agreement is a legal document that basically states what your power and your rights are within that business. It's a legal document. It's a contract. It's a lot of boilerplate information, but it is a way for if you're doing a partnership, a bank's probably going to require you to have an operating agreement that just says if you still owe us money, we have the right to take over your business. Those, really hard to hear things, but that's why we say boilerplate. But usually it's really great in a partnership to really define your roles, to define what you can do to each other in case you get sideways, and what you do if you're really successful. So you all like each other and you're getting along great. But somebody wants to expand into 3 new stores, but you don't. You're kind of happy with the way it is. An operating agreement would define that. And usually that's a separation into, okay, we're going to change the operating agreement. You're going to go do your stuff. I'm going to keep my stuff. So there's a lot of different ways to get around it, but it really defines those exit strategies, the financial responsibilities, the way that it can be broken or severed. So that's really important to make sure that you do have an out. It's not just an end all be all. You can negotiate and talk about it and have some set measures in there so that you can figure out a way. With Limestone, we were in an operating agreement, a contracted partnership. I invested less than the principal partner, and it eventually kind of got us into an uncomfortable space because I needed to make a salary, and so and the principal owner thought, well, maybe you should work for less and work for more profits. So I did that, and then that really didn't work out. COVID hit. And we did have a way that we could get out of our operating agreement, and the principal owner wanted to buy our shares. It all worked out fine. It wasn't ugly. It was a little uncomfortable for a little while, but it certainly helped us to know that we did have an out, that we had kind of that card that we could pull and say, if we want to get out of this business, here's what we can do. So, but it can help you grow, it can help define how the company can grow, how you could license it and do things in the future, and certainly how the company would be dissolved if things didn't go well, the business closed, who's responsible for what, if there's still debt to pay off, all those things, it's death and taxes, right? You still have to find a way to figure out all of those things. I believe in proactive financing, and what this means is plan ahead, plan your financing, plan your organization ahead of time. I feel like I can be a great resource for anybody that either wants to open a business or wants to improve their business, and finding out where they're at and identifying gains, losses, leakages, all of those things. But from a startup standpoint, always start with a business pro forma. This is something that anybody can sketch out on a napkin, on a piece of paper. It's a real simple spreadsheet computation to just say, and I'll definitely want to show you an example of a pro forma, but pro forma for me is, what is your business? Let's say it's a small cafe, coffee shop. How many seats? There's 30 seats. How many hours you're open? So I'm going to compute the number of seats, how many butts and seats that I expect to have, how much that person's going to spend, and then what that equals out to per hour, per day, per week, per month, per year. It's real easy. It's hypothetical. It's totally dreamy. I love it. I think it's so much fun to make a pro forma and think like out into the future like that, and imagining people walking in and out of the door buying something. But it really helps you think about that financial expectation if you really think, well, I need to make $60,000 a year off of this business. Well, that's where you start, because you start a business pro forma. How many people are gonna walk in and out of the door? How much money are they gonna spend? And then you do a small, medium, and large version. Say you go gangbusters, say you go break even, like you need 12 people to walk through that door between 8 AM and noon to break even. Those are really great things to identify. And like I said, it's real easy. I got business pro formas that I've designed that I can share with anybody. But to me, it's really fun. I break it down to the hour because we know the different hours of the day are busier. Coffee shop, you're probably gonna be busy between like 7 and 10. And then you're gonna go through the slow hours. Maybe you get like the study group later in the afternoon or in the evening, people that come in and take up space and open their laptops and maybe drink a cup of coffee or two. But those are things to think about, and it can all be done in a pro forma. Basically just a mathematical equation of deciding how much money you're gonna make off of each person. Always deciding on who's watching the books. See too many people open a business and they don't think about this. And then a month and a half comes being open and people are knocking on the door asking for payment on bills. And you don't even know where the invoice is. You haven't even gotten checks yet. It's not a good place to get yourself into. So I think that if you've got a fairly large business concept, it's always good to have a bookkeeper, an accountant, maybe a third party, somebody that you hire, because at least you know that that's being done. All you're doing is handing off the invoices. Somebody else is writing the check. Maybe they're doing your payroll, because that's another one that a lot of people don't think about is like people have to be paid. The worst thing you can do as a business owner is not pay people or have a check bounce. And so having somebody that's kind of taking care of that, making sure that an accountant can tell you, hey, you need to make this much this month to make payroll, because that's your most important expense. And having somebody to do, or you do it, but just make sure you plan the time, because it's very important time to, I'm working with a business in town that, really bootstrapped it, really didn't take the time, was just writing the checks. Okay, how much do you want? Okay, here you go. And not really analyzing the costs, not putting it into categories, not reconciling at the end of the month, and having a format in place where you can be reconciling weekly, monthly. And I've got spreadsheets that tell you, here's your sales for today, here's your labor. We know what those are. Every point of sale that's out there right now will tell you what your sales and your labor are, especially if they're clocking in and out through the point of sale. And then fixed costs, you don't always know, but you can pretty much, you can get pretty close on an estimate of what your rent, your cost of occupancy, your taxes. And then your cost of goods is your third big one. What are you spending on groceries? And that is something that's totally within your control. And hopefully you've got your menu prices set accordingly. But those are all things that every single day I have ways that you can look at that every day and go, we only sold $700 today. So that was a $75 loss for us based on these estimates and the knowns of the labor and the sales. So it can all be done, but do it daily. Don't do it at the end of the month, because it can certainly bite you.
What margins should you operate, when you're looking at setting your prices and your purchases? What do restaurants' margins average?
Most benchmarks for your average sit-down restaurant is going to say that you should be at about, between 25 and 30% food cost, between 35 and 40% labor. And that's your prime. That's the two things that are going to eat up, all of your expenses. And then the national average would say that successful restaurants are making between 7 and 12% profit.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's big time.
And then define profit, that's profit is it gross profit or net profit? Is that before you pay the bank? Is that before you pay your investors? Is that before you pay your own salary? Those are things to really think
That's
about.
another challenge I see our entrepreneurs that are startups, they're not including a salary.
They're not paying themselves.
They're not paying themselves.
Yeah.
That's a big mistake.
It's a big mistake. It's scary, but again, we put that in the
You have to do it.
we put that in the bootstrapping category, and it's
Yeah.
I'll eat next month, So I've got a restaurant. I can just eat here. But certainly a lot of different ways to do it. But yeah, that's a really good point that you know,
Labor is so expensive.
it is. It is. Yep. Yeah.
We have not paid ourselves,
Mm,
but that's because that's a big
Yeah.
expense.
yeah. And when I talk about, pro formas, and we'll get into, profit and loss sheets in a minute, but I always tell people, in your dream scenario, in your concept, go ahead and write in, your salary, your guaranteed payment, whatever you want to call it, from that before you look at your profit margin, because to me, you have to include that, when you're doing your setup. And do we? No, hardly ever do we do it, because we have a dream. We want to open the business. And I've been involved in a lot of businesses where we did set it up, and then you had to have the hard conversation 3 months later. Well, we're paying ourselves too much. And you kind of set your lifestyle to that, and then you take a pay cut within the partnership, and that doesn't ever feel right either. But again, you do what you do for the health business. And yeah, it's there's a lot of different ways to do it, for sure. I believe in spreadsheets. There's a spreadsheet for everything. It's really easy to do. I grew up before spreadsheets. My kids are being taught this in school, and I had to learn how to make a spreadsheet after I was a business owner, and it was just like mind blowing. Like, oh, I can do that for this, and I can make a schedule that calculates the hours of the schedule and how much each person is getting paid. And just you put your mind to it, you can figure it all out. But it does help, especially for projecting, but also for monthly, weekly reconciling, all of those things. To me, it's just a really helpful way of kind of knowing where you're at, whether it's theoretical or actual. And we talk about that a lot in the restaurant world. Theoretical is that pro forma, the projection, and then the actual is, how much money you actually put in your pocket or how much money you actually lost. And knowing the difference between the two and getting them as close together as possible is, to me, the really fun part of spreadsheets, is making the projection, using as much data as it comes to me, putting as many invoices and bills and labor and all that stuff into it, and seeing if I can get it to meet up, to the dollar with the actual after the accountant has reconciled at the end of the month. It's a real fun challenge for me. I really love technology. As I've talked about, I build spreadsheets to, put sales up against labor. I use things like Google Drawing to do diagrams of plates for restaurants that I've done. Not actually a photograph, but, just using color codes, iPads in the kitchen with recipes and stuff, scheduling, all of those things can be done with technology. And I have found that people really appreciate the technology within a business. The staff, they really like when you've got everything kind of available at their fingertips. A restaurant that I'm working with right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm taking all the recipes that are in Chef's head, and I'm having Chef write them down on paper, and I'm putting them into Google documents and spreadsheets with photos and everything, so that when they train their next person, they can just say, here's the iPad, here's what this dish looks like, here's everything that's in it, here's how much it costs us to make it, if they want to disclose that information. But I know the owner wants to know how much money we have wrapped up in that, and how much we're getting for it. So those are all things that can be done really easily with technology. I think you just got to train yourself to get into it. And then when you get the rewards of it, you're hungry to do more and to use more spreadsheets and technology to do different things. Yes.
Do you recommend putting it on a spreadsheet like this with an iPad? Because I've been doing everything in a folder as far as the recipes.
You mean on paper? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. That's the way we always did it, right? I mean, we had little laminated cards that, the problem with that is it's so fast to edit on the digital model. And also you can have different databases. And when I say databases, I mean your ingredients and things talk to each other, so you can more quickly cost things out. But I think as long as you have things documented and written down, absolutely, that's a great way to do it. That's how I learned, I mean, it was a long time before I worked in restaurants, and we even had things written down, There were handwritten index cards of paper that had tomato stains all over them, falling apart. So to me, this is a safe storage. It's can't spill on it, you can't, you can edit it really quickly, you can use the information to do other things. And it's just, to me, it's really pretty to look at. So, I really, I love having a Google Doc with a photo of the menu item, the build sheet, which is everything that's going in that particular plate, how much you've got in it, what your menu price is, maybe what your menu description is. If it's something you don't sell all the time, you can always reference it. And then, of course, the procedure of how you might make it, whether it's a menu item or a batch recipe.
Where like our the recipes are set up for this,
Mhm.
and we wanna make 3 or 4 things. Just put it in.
Yep, it's formula. Yep.
And then there's certain things like, front area or one item
Mhm,
situation that's not to do with it,
mhm,
so it's like camping for
mhm.
somebody to slip up.
Mm.
I think. Put it together.
Sure, I think the challenge is that, you know, if you're used to doing it one way, then you gotta plan the time to do it a different way. But to me, there are those investments in time that gain you, you know, either more time or profits in the future. So digital is always the way to go for me, just because I've got 7 different restaurants in here that I can access. I can go back and find an old recipe. I can send it to somebody really quickly. And it's just, and you can make formulas. So at the pizza restaurant, you know, we had our dough that we made once a day. And all we had to do was put how many doughs we projected to sell that day. So if you put 200 in, the formula auto-populates all the ingredients. And that's all the baker had to do was look at the report. Okay, it's Friday, it's gonna be busy. We're gonna do 300 pizzas today, 300, boom. Here's everything that goes in the mixer. So,
You know, trademark stuff,
Mhm.
like, I had people wanting to buy recipes.
Mhm.
And there's things that I found recipes.
Mhm.
So how do you handle
Mhm.
that kind of situation? And that's the only thing with my digital situation,
Mhm.
it's like, you do a non-disclosure meter
Mhm.
for everybody that comes in. But I always feel like technology, you know, sometimes you lose that.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, yeah, you can sell it, that's your recipes
Yeah.
are your prize of what you have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, like, and that we.
I always look at it, so in your situation, I would think, well, does somebody want to make my recipe at home for their kids? If that's the case, I'm not real worried about it. Does somebody have an idea like I have and they want to do the same thing that I'm doing? And that's when you have to be really careful. And then I say, talk to your lawyer and, you know, find out what the right price is for your intellectual property to give it to somebody. And then can you sell your service too? And I'll come teach you how to make it, you know? I mean, I've done that a lot, but it's really, I've gotten over the years to not hold too tight to that sort of stuff. You know, that business I worked at for 20 years, I really cut my teeth on as a chef. The owner just, you know, made me make sure that nobody was taking photos of the recipes or anything like that. And, you know, the newspaper would call me and say, we really want that cheddar ale soup recipe that is so famous. And it took me years for me to talk the owner into giving that recipe to the newspaper because that was publicity for us. People are gonna try to make it and they're gonna fail. Some people are gonna try to make it and think it's not as good as it is the restaurant. But really, ultimately, it was good publicity. But I think in your case, because you have a more specialized product, I would totally think of it as like a, you know, consulting opportunity to sell an idea if that's what you choose to do. But uh-huh,
So I have to go back, like, they try it, stuff.
yeah,
And I'm like, oh, no, because I'm tapping into that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it'd be-
yeah. I would look at it as if they're out of my market, can I make some money off of it? You know, and then do it the right way, make sure that, you know, talk to a lawyer, I don't know, or just do it yourself and sign that non-disclosure, make them sign a non-disclosure. Here's what they can do with your recipe. They can't sell it, you know, within, or 2 states of you, things like that can be written into a document. And yeah, I would say it sounds totally safe if they're far away from you. Yeah, that's,
Unless you want to become a national, right?
I do, that's like,
Yeah.
the main goal was to be wholesale,
Uh-huh.
but life is
Or
definitely, yeah, it's been a definite turn and jump on opportunities because of the
Mhm.
situations that we've been in. So the main goal was to be wholesale, that ended up being kind of
Mhm.
back burner because of situations that.
Yeah.
I mean, you just never know. Like you were saying, your business of life.
Yeah.
And it's driving you off.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes what I want to be. And, like life really, you know.
this is a really big mission statement opportunity for you in that vein, because to me, I would consider it a big compliment if somebody came up to me and said, I want your paleta recipe. It's so good. But then how do you do it the right way? But it's a big compliment. It says you're doing something right. And, again, in a mission statement of like, here's how we're going to take care of our intellectual property. We may let it go if it's the right situation. But it sounds like your dream is to get out there. I know cold chain is probably your biggest challenge and hurdle, with a frozen product. Because if you're not self-distributing, you're relying on, I'm in the food distribution business and I know what a nightmare it can be to move things around cold chain. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, those docks at big companies like US Foods and Cisco and Shamrock, that product comes in from you and it's in any form less than perfect, They know that they're gonna have to give all their customers credits on it if they buy it, so it is a big challenge. Yeah, I mean, getting to that next step is, I've done a lot of product development and have gotten close to that next step with non-perishables, granola bars, jerkies, things like that. It'll, a lot easier than frozen popsicles, but it can be done. And there's a lot of third-party companies out there that are trying to form those relationships too. I can't really name any of them, but I know that the Amazon age has kind of, there's companies that are helping your companies get to that capacity increase and helping companies either find co-packers or, cold chain distribution, whatever, to kind of get you to that next level. So there's certainly opportunities out there. I'm not an expert on it, but I'd really like to learn.
You could
Yeah.
become an expert.
Yeah. Sure, maybe you could become an expert on popsicles. So this is probably one of the biggest discussions, but I didn't want to spend too much time about it. Getting to the finish line with a business, understanding what the finish line is. Is it getting the doors open? Is it getting a year under your belt? Is it getting 5 years of financial success under your belt? Who knows? It's for each of us to define. But I can guarantee you, it's certainly not just getting the doors open, because that's usually when the hard work starts and the problems start. So always understand the finish line. Always know that if you are in the idea concept stage, it's going to take longer than you think. The only time I ever see a concept finish on time is if it's somebody's 4th or 5th store of the same concept, where you've done it before, you know exactly what needs to happen and when. You can copy and paste a lot of the licensing and things like that. But if you're doing a one-off startup, a year is not enough time. 2 years sometimes is not enough time, even from the licensing stage. Like, say you're good to go from licensing, it's still going to take you a long time. Things are going to come up. It's going to be hard to do. Help is hard to find these days. Getting the doors open does not mean that you have anybody to work there. And that's a really harsh reality that we live with right now is, are you going to do all the work? And I tell people to think of that in the beginning, like, are you designing a business where you're gonna do it all, so that you don't have to worry about that part of it? Or are you going to find a financial model that can pay people more than anybody else so that you can get those people? And I work with a lot of people on figuring out new financial models. That's really all the rage right now is how can we make our employees partners? How can we profit share with them? How can we incentivize them on cost of goods and labor percentages to always keep us below our benchmarks, so we know we're always profitable. If we know we're always profitable, we're gonna give you more money as our staff that are managing this and doing it. There's a lot of different ways that people are working on right now. I think it's really fun to conceptualize with businesses, but it's the new age of thinking. It's trying to figure out how we're gonna pay people as much money as they can go make working for Amazon or coding on their laptop or anything, because of all of the low wage jobs that are out there, restaurants are the hardest. Washing dishes is not easy, cooking, line cookie is not easy. Heck, even being a barista, making a hot coffee over and over again is not easy. And people know it. It used to be fun to you want to get in there. When I was a kid, you want to get in there, you want to do that work, you want to see how it's all done. But now you can watch it on YouTube. So why would you want to go out and learn it? And I think that is, technology is great for us, and it's also crushing us in that sense that we don't have enough young people that are wanting to learn how to do some of the service level jobs because of the art of it and the camaraderie. It's not there as much as it used to be.
Why
So-
is that? What do you think? I think it's because people want to do something that's I guess meaning. Well, for me, I just have a fear of asking questions and learning. If I'm gonna do it wrong, I'll get yelled at. I just tend to.
I had saute pans thrown at me.
That's what?
I said I had saute pans thrown at me.
No.
But I was a young kid dishwasher. I mean, it's different, and again, I'm emotionally prone to disappointment and things. It really drives me. So I know exactly what you're talking about in that sense. And restaurants, sometimes people like that can find the perfect place, and sometimes it's immediate, no, this is not the place for me.
Actually, what I said, meaningful. What is it meaningful about the service that you?
Well, I guess for me is doesn't leave a lasting impact on the world. A lot of my friends, they want to be engineers or scientists or
Mhm.
people that will leave a mark.
Can I show you the video that I just made this morning? Because I can tell you in our business, the only reason we've been successful is because we are kind.
Cause you're what?
Kind.
Kind.
That is
Mhm.
I can say, I have great opportunities that I have to jump on, but the reason we have grown is because our staff is good people. And this is just a related because this is why I started my business, and I think that's unfortunate to hear. This is things that we But this is the impact that I think the youth is touching. I think it's unfortunate.
But what I think is, what I say is, to me, there's nothing more sacred than Mother Earth. And what grows from Mother Earth? What grows from Mother Earth? Food,
Yeah.
right? And, unfortunately, and I'm not saying, I honor what you think and I believe in this world, everyone plays an important role, right? From the migrant worker that picks the strawberries that you had for breakfast yesterday, that we don't even see, right? We don't see in the cycle of what keeps us alive and healthy. And I think, but I hear what you're saying, because I think we've done this with many industries. From mechanics to plumbing to you know, the key roles that are so important to the infrastructure of our communities, we have not valued them. And so that has influenced. Yeah, and for educators, right? It should be the highest paid, right? And so, but it's really interesting, and I ask because I wanna know, because I have to figure out why, you know, what are these paradigms that you all are, where you're at right now and seeing the world? Because you love to eat, right? None of us could survive without it, right? So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I would say like backwards and meaningful of our food. Like our concept is making our chamoy. There's probably 90% of people that have had chamoy have never had a non-red dye, you know, chamoy. You know, and we're offering that. It's a little pricier. Yes, it is, but I'm doing fair wages and I'm trying to, this is a new concept in a way.
Right.
So it's hard because the bottom line effects. But like having a relationship with food, and that's kind of education was a big one there. Relationship with food. I think people don't have a relationship.
Just shove it in their
with
face.
food, like even cereal, it's just cereal. Guess where that comes from? It still came from Mother Earth. There's still effective right farmers. There's kids in the United States picking food that are out and things like that. Like, if you would, even though service jobs are so many, I get
Learn so much.
emotional.
That's okay.
Those service jobs make somebody's day, or you can break it, you know, and what you do in your foot forward is shown. It really is. I just wanted to say that. Sorry.
And I think exactly what you're,
It's all about understanding.
I think what you're defining is exactly the reason why I left restaurants to go teach culinary arts. Is because I wanted more youth to have a connection with the food. I wanted them to see it, beautiful restaurant presentations and feel that vibe, but in a controlled environment, but have that reward. You know, it's high school kids at the end of the class and they get to eat the food. Like it was really powerful. And I kept making that a mission to go back every time. And it ebbs and flows. And I'm not going to say that we're at a real low point right now with people being connected to their food, but it's an issue. And I, you know, I make sure my kids love everything. We grow food. Food hardly makes it out of the garden. They eat it all out there. And so I think there's different conceptually, philosophically, to me, people need to learn how to cook.
Sure.
And that keeps people connected with food. They need to learn how to grow food so they know how hard it is. And they know how hard it is to get that food from a garden to a palete. And I think whatever outreach you can do, I think it's, yeah.
I was so cringe money. She's helping us with ideas. When we teach you how to do a plancha, like make a plancha, you can see like them having, and she's out there to serve. And I think that's like not even just Marlene, Rocket's a little boy from Hawaii, and he's like learning how to make chamoy. My son's cooking, he's 15 years, not even 15, he'll be 15 in June. And we've been able to leave him his head cook. And he's been able to.
Your youngest.
Yeah, and he's been falling in love with it, like, you know,
Great.
and so there is that. I'm very blessed with the people that I do have, they're seeing my mission, they're seeing what we're doing, and I think you're gonna get great individuals, great employees, and you're not gonna get so great employees, that's just the fact, you know? But we're blessed with people who do have kids, there's something like I'm sure they're seeing. It's not me.
No, it's not.
I've seen these kids, I range from 14-year-olds to 11-year-olds right now, and then I'm probably 27-year-olds in the back, taking an initiative. But you have a three? I have two boys, 27-year-old not mine, he's hours of cook, but even him at 27 having given the opportunity to take on responsibility, he's never had it. And he's 27, and I'll say, thank you for actually like carrying and actually like in trusting me. Sometimes I think too, sometimes it means it's like, we have to cultivate people,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
have to cultivate your team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
I think something that's also important to remember is even if you're a young person, you don't want to stay in the food industry, the food industry can teach you a lot of valuable skills. If you want to be an engineer or a scientist or be in marketing like I am, I started, my first job was in the food industry. I learned, patience, I learned communication, I learned customer service. I learned all of my people skills there. And so I feel like even if you're not, even if it's not your dream to stay in the service industry, it's very helpful and you learn some meaningful skills.
Yeah, definitely, I do my 20 years in hospital radiology and service definitely has taught me to transfer those skills and dealing with people in distress. Because you're able to deal with people in a manner that they're okay, confident. And I
Oh.
think it's that. I just didn't talk about when you said that. Why is the youth, but I honestly feel the youth has been more, helpful in the business than, I think I struggle with the late 20s, sort of 30s section, for whatever reason, I don't know. That generation's the one that struggles most with employment, but.
Up to 40, I think.
Yeah, like when I get 40, like late 30s, 40s, they're all fine. They're ready to hustle, they wanna work. When I get mid 25, early 30s, I don't know what's going on there.
This is really fantastic. I don't know, I can't say that I planned it, but you guys are really nailing my final bullet here. Because, when you make it to the finish line and you're doing business, you know that there's no time to go back, but it sounds like you're doing a great job delegating responsibility and being leaders and taking care of your people and yourselves. And these are really important things to me. Hate to see people, get into business and, kind of go down the wrong way. I've seen it way too many times on the professional chef side of it, of, the lifestyle. I, just lost another friend yesterday, from addiction and, lifestyle choices and it's just, I can't tell you how many it's been over the last 5 or 6 years.
Sorry, I really was in this one.
Yeah. And I've just made it my mission to make sure that it can be a positive space. It can be happy. It can be full of, opportunities and we can be great leaders in these businesses that people take for granted. And I love the video. It's just, that's so great. It's such a great example of, you change lives, and you may not always change lives, but you change moods. And that's really cool that, you can put a smile on somebody's face. I really, really love it. I'm gonna try to get you guys out of here, but again, be organized. Go back to the mission statement, take all these things that you've thought of, put them, back in your mission statement so that before you get to the next level, you've taken all this information and that's how I want to be. So I'm going to put it in there. And I always tell people, don't be a junk drawer. We keep all those things in the junk drawer because we think we're going to need it someday, and we will. We're going to need that document. We're going to need that piece of paper that we got when we opened our business, and it's who knows where. And we will need it someday, but just keep it organized and make sure you know exactly where it is, so that you can reference that the next time that you need it. And I do want to leave some time for question and answers. Here's my information if anybody wants to get a hold of me for anything. My Instagram handle is Chef Rick Martin as well. You can kind of see the last 10 years of my life and scroll back a little bit and see more of the restaurant and teaching life, but there's a lot of fun stuff to see there. And feel free to reach out to me, email me, whatever you need to do. And I'll stay in touch and make myself.
I think I would love for you to really be close to us, especially as we start to really launching the incubator accelerator, we start creating these mentorship pods. I think your experience, because really, it's not just restaurants, right? The things that you're talking about
Yeah, absolutely.
encompass business.
Yeah, I get real boring if I just talk about restaurants.
All
So
types.
I like to kind of keep it open to all, businesses and ways of life, because it all relates. It really does. So, any, questions that you've come up with through the course of this that we want to talk about? Yes.
So you had mentioned ideas of like, because right now we're only 2 months into the restaurant,
2 months?
2 months.
Wow.
And so, profit margins, and it's hard to hit those profit margins. Labor is the thing, incentives.
Mhm.
Because we pay $2 per living wage non-tip. So by the time they get tipped, they're at $2 an hour because
Mhm.
where we're coming from, it's people
Mhm.
we don't want them hustling 4 or 5
Right,
jobs.
right.
But then that puts us,
When can you get,
sometimes we're beating hearts in a way.
Sure.
So now, like, even now, we need to be hitting numbers that are above that.
Mhm.
You know, we have to actually be double
Mhm.
of what we're hitting in the last 2 months.
Mhm.
So there is marketing, what are the things that ways and get that besides marketing? Because right now, the last 2 months is just word of mouth.
Yeah.
And social media, it's free
Mhm.
and get food shop.
Yeah.
type situation.
Sure. Well, the reality is that there's two different ways. You can raise your prices, which I think that people are more forgiving than what we tend to think in our industry, that we think that it's going to be the worst thing in the world if we raise our prices.
Even
Because the first thing that people say in the reviews are, it's too pricey, it's expensive. And I look at that and I just don't even hear it, because to me, it's really the product. I'm cost conscious, don't get me wrong. I'm not like going into a restaurant, not caring about what I'm spending. But I do know the value of food, and I know the love put in food, and I know that that it can and should be more expensive than it is in a lot of examples. But to take that a step further, it should be costed properly. So make sure that you're getting the margin that you want out of each item, not your total food costs, not your total sales for the month. Each item, I feel like if you have a paleta that has an expensive ingredient in it, you need to make sure that you're getting your 75% or whatever you want out of that. I mean, it's just really important. The marketing piece is, the more seats you fill, the more volume you get. We know labor can only go, cost, the more food you sell, the higher your cost is going to go up because you're using more stuff. But labor, if you're busy, it's the same amount of people to do that extra amount of business. And that's where the gravy comes in. So really, it's either raise your prices or achieve a volume. That word of mouth is great. But you got to line out the door and you're achieving that volume ratio where same amount of people to do a lot more business. That's the one that really helps you be successful, because that makes all of your problems go away when you're doing more business.
Should they do like a budget for like carry out versus in the restaurant versus maybe catering? I don't know.
I tell people all the time, don't give your carry out supplies away,
No, you have to charge them.
and, I think
Cost.
there's some busy restaurants and concepts that, they've achieved a level of success where they're just like, whatever it takes. But I do feel like for a small business, you need to, I always called it a tax. So at a pizza restaurant, we had a condiment, a chili sauce that I made that people put on their pizza. Who knows how much they used? It was expensive to make. So we calculated how much of that we made in a year, and we taxed each pizza in our cost. So we've got that 25 cents more added onto the menu. Same thing with pizza boxes, 50 cents a pizza box.
Yeah.
Sometimes people would just take it to put their 2 leftover slices in. They're walking out with that 50-cent pizza box. So I decided to come up with, well, I buy, 8,000 pizza boxes a year. I'm going to make sure that each pizza we sell has a little bit of that cost hidden into it, whether they take a pizza box, whether it's carry out or not. So then it's equal. Everybody's paying the same thing. And the easiest way to get people to understand this is the fryer. You're making a fish and chips. You got French fries, you got fish, and they're both absorbing oil. And, it's the oil that you're going to throw away, but the cost of using that oil has to be calculated into the food. And so, and if you don't calculate that in, because that's a lot of money, fryer oil costs a lot of money, especially if you fry a lot of food. So you have to calculate that into each dish that you sell. And I just always called it a fryer tax. And if it was fish and chips and fried potatoes and fried fish, then double, That's why you see fish and chips really expensive sometimes, because people are really trying to justify how much
Calculate
they.
it into the mix price
Yep.
rather than
Yep.
seeing all these ancillary costs on the hamburger.
I had it in my ingredient list. It was called fryer tax, or it was called pizza tax.
So, okay, I walk into your beautiful store. It's winter, it's cold. I don't want a Costco. What do you, so during the winter, I mean, if you think of hot months versus winter months, there has to be an opportunity in sales fluctuation, right? So what I would want to say, but you're making Mexican pan, you're making, different,
We're doing run stuff for the winter, 'cause we are at the.
but it's right in the front though. Your paletas are right in the front during winter.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that can be moved, but what I'm saying is, you know, I always think from a merchandising perspective, seasonality, right? What do I want? I'd rather have like a warm pan or, you know, whatever. Nobody's making baguettes, nobody's making French bread. There's nowhere to go for fresh stuff like that. Huge seller, any market I've been at, huge. I don't know, I just, you know, I'm thinking as you're growing your business, to kind of be thinking from a seasonal perspective, right? Like I know, for example, Wild Leaven Bakery, they only make soup in winter with bread, right? They don't do it in the summer.
But we do have items that would satisfy that, but like when you kind of brought it home, and when you set the merchandising piece. And that way, people walk in and they see it and they didn't know what they needed until they saw it themselves, you know what I'm saying? And so I could totally see us replacing that paleta freezer, you know, putting it in storage for, 4 months and then putting in some sort of like a
Yeah,
pastry warmer, hot food,
and maybe more
like
specialized, right?
a grab and go type of thing, for warm stuff.
I mean,
Cause we do
Where
some
can you-
conchas, we make conchas.
Yeah.
And then we do, Mexican hot chocolate, so in the winter, when it was snowing, it wasn't really winter, but we would actually get a lot of people coming in when it was snowing, coming in for our ramen, coming in for our conchas, or hot
Mhm.
chocolate, or mini donuts. So like those days were the days I was, why not, but I like the merchandise.
Yeah, but you also think, I don't know, just,
No, I think that's a wonderful idea, because that freezer spiked out, and we already have, people know it.
yeah.
But
Mhm.
with that,
And I think, you know, when you first open your business, consistency of hours of operation are real important. You know, and so you have to find, you know, maybe early morning's not your time, right? Because Coco's busy, they're selling their coffee, they're selling their, I don't know, you know, when are you gonna maximize your traffic, right? And maximize sales? But consistency and being open is really important, because people are gonna start coming, and, you know, if it's closed, you know, you could lose potential future customers.
and I think in the beginning, we were trying to figure that out. We have it, that we're.
So those are your hours every day?
Those are hours we, when we're open during that time. I think in the beginning, we were doing.
Early.
In the morning, I mean, we have to, like, adjust, that was the thing, you have,
Mhm.
like, your business, it makes you, if you're not flexible, and you don't adjust, you're so hard headed not to move, you're gonna lose, like,
Yeah.
that's part of the business,
But at the same time, we also have to be wary of that ones and reacting to everything, and kind of seeing like what are legit concerns and what are just like, okay, whatever, so just kind of like pests buzzing by your ear, you know what I'm saying? So like, so that's kind of another thing that we learned along the way is, like, okay, this is where we can make an adjustment that makes sense and or something.
You make the best sliders I've ever had.
And that's.
I'm serious, and you know what, nobody makes it here.
And the thing is, this is.
Oh my
good.
God, and coleslaw,
You
and
gotta talk to
coleslaw.
them about marketing, because today I told them, guess what, we have a space to put the barbecue in front. He's like, but I want it in the back, and I'm like, that's the barbecue in front, people are gonna see it, and so, but logistically, it makes more sense for me to get food in the back. And I'm like, cool, but we we have a space for the barbecue in the front where people can see it, and it's like, they'll smell it from the back. No, they're gonna smell the food, no matter where the heck it is. They're not gonna see it, so that's just something I said today. If anybody wants to hop on, you can listen then.
I think definitely it needs to be part of your assortment, because they are delicious.
Yes, I'm working on it, I'm working it in, but,
And there's, there's one barbecue place, they've kind of changed owners, I hear it's dry brisket, I don't know what's going on.
well, I've been wanting to do it, and I like the idea of having two barbecue places, because it gives me an opportunity to
He makes it like,
springboard off of somebody else.
It is the best.
it literally is the best barbecue in town. Like, what, not to say, but.
It is-
we have-
it is the
we
best
have
I got.
people from the south have his barbecue and mac and cheese and say that's the best barbecue. We've had people from Texas that say this is the best
There you
barbecue,
go.
but I'm gonna not barbecue right now. You guys can try to.
I'm gonna, let me know when you make it. But the other concern, that I have for all I have for humanity, the cost of goods.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, I really worry, what's gonna happen, right? I go to the store to buy a bag of dog food and two bags of dry boxes of wet, I'm paying $120 just for dog food.
Mhm.
And so, what we have to be thinking about, global warming's real. That means there's gonna be water challenges, right? So that's gonna impact what? The food chain.
Yeah.
And so the more that happens, the more what? The cost of goods goes up.
Mhm.
And so I worry about how we're gonna manage that.
Mhm.
For those entrepreneurs that are, for all of us, number one, but especially for business that specialize in this. What do you do?
Well, we're all in that boat together. I mean, we're all paying more. So, and I mean, it's companies like, Walmart and Costco that really make us fight over it because we're like, well, I can go get my milk for $2 less a gallon than I can from my food distributor. And
Wow.
that makes it challenging because those are lost leaders for them. If they can get you to come in and buy their milk, they know you're gonna buy everything else, so they'll sell you the milk really cheap.
Yeah, I worked for them.
So that's thing about water and global warming. I try to, all the things that I get, like, cause you have to also follow your reviews and you have to respond to everything. You have to do it gracefully.
Mhm,
Like, we do everything, we're a street food,
mhm.
and so we do everything paper plates. You think the paper plates was an issue for me, but I am pulling water from a well.
Mhm,
I did 2 pounds, it's 2 liters for every time I run that dishwasher.
mhm,
So I'm in the state of New Mexico.
mhm.
So where do I get the cost? Do I get a bunch of plates that I'm gonna use to well, and
Yeah.
water, or do I do paper plates for everybody? So there's always things like that. And also like, yeah, my things are a little bit, well, I don't even say, it's just the cost of food.
Yeah.
The cost, yeah, the cost is crazy.
Create a trend too, because, yeah, you all can undercut me, but I'm not gonna mess with my quality of food, and this is the cost. And it has to go the other way too, to convince other restaurateurs to understand this is the cost and people need to adjust it.
Mhm.
If they wanna serve quality and get quality food at
Yeah.
prices. And that another thing is I buy from locals, come that fall time, I'm getting prepared from scratch. I'm getting food from local farmers.
Mhm.
And it's hard because I can get it cheaper somewhere else, but I'm part of the community
Mhm.
and these people are part of it. So I need to pay, and that's the thing. I'm taking everybody's considerations, communities about wages, food, like where it's coming from, local community business, how do we help each other out? And it's hard because, like you were saying, we can't be changing the message all the time.
No,
But we
no.
gotta stick to our guns and say, hey, look, this is, we provide love, we provide care, we're doing quality food, and time, labor.
No, but there's your marketing campaign.
But they love you.
Particularly the fact that you're buying as you can, so it's.
We buy local, yeah.
Staying in the community, supporting the community, creating that kind, great space to share food and share that energy like that. There's a marketing thing
Yeah.
in there.
And you may have to stick it out for a little bit, but I guarantee you from my own examples and my experience that doing the local thing and sticking to your mission on community and farmers, it is profitable. You just have to stick with it, and you have to make sure you're fair with your pricing, that if you're paying more for that prickly pear, you're putting that on to the consumer, because those consumers that really believe in what you're doing will pay more, and it's the right way to do it. And then you'll get that audience of people that are coming to you for those reasons, because they feel good eating your stuff and your food. And that's what you really want. You want that audience that really understands what you're doing. And you will get that if you keep pushing for it. And then it becomes successful and profitable for you.
Should they know,
Yeah, that was like
tell that story.
the last 2 months I was up there. It was, flavors are great, it was
Mhm.
good, but it's pricey. I'm like, this is.
Yeah.
Welcome to Toledo.
And that person,
He actually said something that really rubbed me. Cause I was like trying to like net everybody in,
Mhm.
and he said, maybe they're just not your customer.
Yeah.
It's not about you just being there for them,
Yeah.
but they're just not your customer, and I have that like resonated.
And I would tell you, I mean, I did this when I was, in retail. But it's important to take time to study the competition. There's no one like you, but there are similar restaurants out there open that are selling similar things.
Yeah.
And it would be, I would wanna always do a cost, like to kind of just do a competitive analysis, to kind of see what's happened. And I mean, at the end of the day, you have to manage your numbers, but I think it's good to understand, because it's important to know.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we've done that, like, a lot of the others are sending their. They don't have all the entries.
Mhm.
But then at the same time, yeah, we're not sure that we number all the stuff.
Yeah.
Are you doing any catering?
It's not yet, because we need to buy cooks for catering, because it's a whole.
I have like concepts on catering, like kind of like a take and go type of thing, like we're not gonna go and serve it to you, but you can order like bulk, like
Mhm.
meats. A lot of the stuff that if I get an advanced order, I could prepare easily.
Mhm.
Kind of like doing like, a lot of people like have their own discos or any type of flat top grill. My concept would be, get like a taco party pack, you buy all the meat from me. You can buy it cold, you can buy it hot, you take it, rewarm it, there's a pack of our tortillas, this is how you do it. Have fun. in your
Smart,
house.
very
That's
smart.
great.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We haven't really gotten to that point, like I had this concept of all this stuff that I wanted to put on my menu, not knowing I needed a small army to execute it all properly within a time. Like a timely manner, so I have to like really like
Think about it,
scale
yeah.
everything down and kind of figure out a way to bring everything online and kind of. What steps do I have to do now to kind of set the conditions to use things in the future? So those are the types of catering events I want to do. So, and then eventually do like more of like a full service type of catering, but for right now, I think what we could probably comfortably handle is that type of catering, and I like the idea.
And it works, every graduation or funeral or wedding I've gone to, they just have the bulk and
Right.
people are serving.
And my favorite part of it is like with our paletas, my favorite part is me making 100 paletas or 50 pounds of meat and knowing that I have a check waiting for me at the end of it, rather than me making it, having to sell it and figuring when I'm gonna get my return on my money. So I really like that idea. We just got it operationally, got to the point where we can plug that in without spreading ourselves too
And
thin.
that's the thing, like, you were saying, like, you are gonna be working hard and everything, and so right now, we're working in our business on our, not necessarily on our business. And barely starting to get enough staff, but it's so vast. Like, even our menu can be crowded, because, and people are like, well, this isn't really, you're missing this, and I understand that, I just don't have the capacity to execute that in a truly manner, because I don't have people.
Mhm.
So as we're getting people, we're like, okay, now we can add this.
Mhm.
Now we can add this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like, you have all these ideas, and then I'm barely in the last week been able to what, 2 hours before you close, 3 hours before you close.
Mhm.
Working 80+ hours.
Mhm. Mhm.
I know.
And so, and that, even, I have to, I've been doing bookkeeping up until now, I have to get QuickBooks to do bookkeeping because I'm so behind. I can't work on my business. So there's so I can do it.
I don't know how the restaurant business as far as menus, but I'm always the one that says less is more, right? So you focus on the 20% of your assortment that's gonna drive 80% of your sales. It's always a 20-80 rule. I've always looked at things like that. And, you know, starting off, it's good to look at it that way. You don't have to be a lot,
Right.
you expand, it's better to be simple and, you know, it's really focus on the things that you're already being successful on.
And that's kind of like the evolution, and to speak on like what you had spoken to earlier about, you have an idea, and then just because you like to eat it doesn't mean everybody likes to eat it. So we had things on our menu were delicious, and a few people who would, everybody who tried it would like it, but not everybody who came in the restaurant wouldn't order it because of whatever reason that, you know, like, I don't want to say anything, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. But, you know, like, hey, we have to, you know, scale back on certain things. What are we doing good at? What are we, you know, like,
Are you tracking, do you have like a point of sale system so you see that?
yeah, so like, for me, it's like, our carnitas are really like underrated and really delicious, but everybody sees video on Instagram and TikTok that everybody comes in and tries the video, right? It's like, it's
The what?
good, the media, the beef, beef that we have. And so it's like, I have to find ways to like offering 2 different things on the menu that'll sell the same meat product, you know, different ways, like a slider to sell the same pork, to bring in tortas to sell the same pork and chicken, so that I can sell different things, but not have to make extra things.
Mhm.
So that's kind of things that I'm thinking about as well.
And then like we ended up figuring out, because I don't know, I'm not really, it's like ate lamb, something that's just regular in our diet, you know, and kind of thing, nobody really eats that much lamb. And
We love
I
lamb.
I have a generational recipe, like, a lamb barbacoa, nobody was ordering, but in their form of time special, that we had to get rid of the lamb. You know, but.
Poor lamb.
And it's like, once I started putting it as a special, then people want it.
Well, Rick, I'm so glad that you got to meet this incredible couple and our interns. And you know what? Again, I always say less is more. This was meant to happen. You had some quality time. He's a big fan. So, but know that we're here for you too, Carmen. Anytime you want to bounce things off, you know.